This is your daily reminder. God has not run out of mercy, not for you, not today. Welcome to the New Mercies Podcast. Welcome back, Tuesday, March the 3rd, and we are in the book of Luke today, specifically chapter 21 in our journals together, in our time together, in our reading plan. I'm very excited about Luke 21 because this is going to be a crazy week. We've just gone from reading Haggai about building the temple, rebuilding of Solomon's temple that was destroyed, then Zerubbabel and that remnant that came back rebuilt the temple. Well, we're going to see today, Jesus is going to talk about the temple getting destroyed. Why are we on the temple so much? I don't know. I think it will help us to maybe see this in light of what all we've kind of gone through and where we're going next. We are toward the end of Jesus' earthly ministry in Luke 21. This week, we will also look into Matthew 24, which is a bit of a mirror here. And in Matthew 23, it kind of gets us set up to where we actually are. And so I want to give you a little background to Luke 21. Before Jesus gives this talk, this address to the disciples and to the people around him, he has just exposed the religious system for what they are. Prideful, arrogant, overwhelmingly hypocritical, and all of those elements, right? It's not the system that is humility and care and love of the Lord. It's pride, it's hypocrisy of the whole religious establishment. That's what's just taken place. He's just exposed all that. You can find that text in Matthew 23 if you want to go into extra Bible study today. But in Luke 21, now after he's exposed all that, he goes into the temple. This temple, by the way, it is the second temple, but it has been renovated. A guy named Herod, an Edomite tyrant. This is not the guy that is a friend of the Jewish people. He is an Edomite, which we can go into history and talk about that. But ultimately, we know today he was a tyrant. He was despised by the Jewish people. He took the temple and renovated it, and made it and expanded it and made it this glorious splendor of a building and architecture. He has built upon it and made it bigger and golder, and if golder is a word, I don't even know, but made it a very big spectacle. Now, the setting is Jesus is in this temple. This is one of the last weeks just days from now. He is going to be taken and his life will be put on display for everyone to see. But in these moments, he is in the temple and he's walking in. And right here, we're going to pick up the story in Luke 21. I encourage you, read the whole thing today. I'm going to talk about the first part, summarize the middle, and talk about the last part for us today, for our purposes today. Now, we're looking at again on Friday this week, so tune back in on Friday. We're going to talk about Luke 21 again. But today, for our purposes, I want to read the first couple of verses in Luke 21. We'll go down through about verse 6 or so. Here's what it says in Luke 21, beginning at verse 1. Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box, and he saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. He said, "Truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on." And while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." Now, what has just happened here is absolutely mind-blowing to me. These are Jesus' followers around him. He's standing in the court of women, which is where the offerings took place, right there in the temple. There are 13 trumpet-shaped boxes, okay? Now, the reason they were trumpet-shaped boxes is because you would throw your money in, and they were metal coins or copper coins or silver coins. They would throw them into these trumpet-shaped boxes, and it would be a loud sound. The more you gave, the louder the sound. The heavier the coin, the louder the sound. The bigger the coin, the louder the sound. You get the idea. And more than likely, the way you poured it in would make the sound ring even louder. So in this court of women, it was the area that women were allowed to go. They could go and give an offering. And so in this court, Jesus is looking around, and there are people giving tons of money. And then there's this little widow over on the side giving her 2 pennies or her 2 small coins. And Jesus, he's trying to teach us something beautiful here. I love Luke 21. It starts with a widow and her silent small gift. It ends with the world completely chaotic. And in the middle of it, it's Jesus trying to teach us something. He says, look at this woman. She's given all she has. She's given more than everybody else. Now, people looking around saying, well, she's not given near as much as everybody else. Because I heard a sermon on this one time that was very convicting. It says, we judge on what we give, and God judges on what we keep. And that one kind of struck me, right? Did I give more to the Lord than I kept this week? My dad used to tell me he was very convicted at one point, and he said, I feel so terrible about my giving. And I said, why is that? And he said, because I kept more than I gave. And I said, well, are you talking about like 50%? And he says, I want to give at least 51% to the Lord in any way possible so that I can give more than I have kept. And I thought, that's crazy. Who lives like that? But then I look and see like the faithful people that live that way are the ones that whenever they see Jesus face to face get a really big reward and a really big introduction into heaven, I'm sure. The rest of us who are selfish people who try to keep so much, Jesus is not talking about us in a good light, right? He talks about this widow in a good light. What does he mean whenever he says she's given everything? She's given out of her livelihood. She's given out of she's given everything she had to live on. What that word means, that's the bios word, to live on. It means she gave out of absolute dependency. She gave what she depended on. What does that say about her relationship with the Lord? I'm not going to depend on my coins. I'm going to depend on you. These others gave out of their abundance. She gave out of her dependency. Powerful, powerful thing. We look at the big gift of the big givers, and Jesus looks at the big surrender of those who surrender to Him and to what God is doing. It sets this entire chapter up, right? Appearance versus reality. What happens next blows my mind. How in the world are the disciples, as Jesus is teaching this lesson, going to say, look at how great the temple is. Look at how adorned it is. Look at how beautiful the stones are. And Jesus says, every stone is going to be upside down. This temple will be destroyed. Here's what takes place in the coming verses. I encourage you, read it all. He begins to dismantle every thought that this is the glory days. He begins to take them all down. He says, this is going to happen. What the disciples start freaking out. They're like, well, explain to us. When is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? And Jesus begins this dissertation. He begins this whole declaration by saying, first off, deception comes first. Deception. He says, there's going to be people that are going to act like me, talk like me, look like me, that aren't me. There's going to be people that are going to try to deceive you and say they're me, and they're not. There's going to be false Christs that come, false messiahs that will show up and try to deceive you. Why? Because here's what Satan does. He deceives you, then destroys you. Destruction is never the first step. It's always deception. Always. There is a lie that creeps in. You start believing that lie, and guess what? You end up being destroyed. That's how it works. Jesus says it begins with deception. So do not be deceived. Here's what he's saying in the first part of this whole lesson that he is teaching, this whole understanding, this revealing of the truth. He says, I want you to know who I am and the purposes and the plans. God is not improvising the future here. He is setting a plan in place, and it is happening. That's what's going on. As Jesus teaches this, he says, I need you to know this is the plan. I need you to know who I am and what the truth is so that you don't get deceived. So know this. Put it in your brain. Put it in your heart. Tie it to everything in your life. Do not be deceived. What that means is I want you to know the truth. That's what I want you to do. Then the end of the chapter. There's a lot that happens in the chapter, and I know some of you are going to run to Revelation 6, and I know some of you are going to run to Matthew 24. We're doing that in a couple days, but I know that you're going to say, well, the end times, end times, end times, end times. Yeah, we can do all that, but here's what I want you to be reminded of today. It starts with the faithfulness of a widow that cares for what God's doing. She gives what she depends on so that she can show where her heart and her emotions and everything she is where it's located. It's located in Him. Then the disciples are overwhelmed by the building. The building's so beautiful. What's crazy? Herod, the builder of this temple, is a tyrant that they despise. They despise him and they idolize what he's built. That's crazy to me. How is that? How are we do that every day. I want let your mind run wherever it wants to run in that. Like, just know we think we despise this builder, but what he's built is magnificent and I love it. And I want to be there where he has built it. We get fascinated by these things. And Jesus says, be careful that you understand. Don't be deceived in the shiny, flashy stuff. Don't be deceived in those that are going to come and try to trick you. Know who I am. Know what the plan is. Here we go. He then explains everything's going to happen. Wars, pestilence. He says, first off, I want you to know this. Don't be deceived. Then, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's going to be wars. There's going to be persecution. There's going to be problems. Don't be afraid. You're on my side. You're on my team. We're good. Then, at the end of the chapter, I want to read a couple more verses, and then we'll be done. The Bible says in Luke 21, down in verse 34, but watch yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the cares of this life, and that day come upon you suddenly like a trap, for it will come upon all who dwell on the face of the whole earth. But stay awake at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. This text is a challenge for us. I want you to know and understand what's going on. I want you to watch and be mindful. I want you to watch. That word watch is not just sit back and watch. That word is an active word. So it means be alert or wake up. Don't be asleep while all this is going on. I want you to be active and I want you to be awake and I want you to be a part of it and I want you to see it and know that, and it even ends it with the phrase, the Son of Man. The Son of Man is the King of Kings. When he returns in glory, it is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. He came the first time, humble, the Son of Man. The second time, he comes in all glory and splendor to reign as King. Watchfulness is proof of life. It means you are awake. You are alert. So when you watch, you are alive. That's the concept. Now, let's go back to the first of Luke 21, right? What does he say about the widow? She gave out of her livelihood. Now he ends the chapter, ends this piece, and there's more that happens in the next couple of chapters. We'll read those in the coming weeks as we're in this new series. But here's what he says: watch, be alive, be alert. I want you to, that means focus your attention where it needs to be focused. For the sinner, this is terrifying. For the saint, this is a relief, because we know who our King is. Listen, the temple may fall, but the King will not. The temple can't stand, but our King can't fall. I want to be encouraging to you today. I want you to read this text today, read it with fresh eyes, fresh ears, and read it with some encouragement today, knowing that our King wins. He reigns. We're going to look again a couple of times this week into some end times pieces, so you'll get more of that from the podcast later. But I just want to encourage you today, be mindful, know where you stand, know where your faith is placed. Don't be overwhelmed. Don't be distracted or deceived by the shininess of things in this world. Be content with who you are in Christ and watch. Be alert. Do not be a lazy person. Be a Christian that is active and sharing his faith, because the end will come at some point. And when Jesus returns, we're going to celebrate with him forever. Our King reigns.